The Middle Belt has long stood as Nigeria's heartland, rich in culture, agriculture, and diversity. But in recent years, it has also become a region marked by pain, displacement, and deep insecurity, from banditry to farmer-herder clashes, and from targeted killings to unresolved communal violence. The people of the Middle Belt are crying out for protection and justice. But is anyone listening? What is being done, and what has failed? Joining us for this NC exclusive is Dr. Stanley Kavwam, who's the Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the Middle Belt Forum, a key voice in advocacy for the region. Dr. Kavwam, welcome to News Central, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, viewers.
All right, now we're going to jump straight into, the meat of this Middle Belt matter, and I think there's no better place to start than to ask you, how would you describe the current state of should I say, security, in the Middle Belt, and how has it evolved in the past 12 to 18 years, basically in the past few years, or rather 12 to 18 months and the past few years?
Well, the Middle Belt region, it's a rich, perhaps maybe the richest of the entire nation, with abundant rivers, with a very, very serene landscape, a very, very good vegetation for agricultural production. In fact, 80% of the land in the Middle Belt region is very, very fertile, as almost about 90% of the population are engaged in agricultural production. So we can say that it is perhaps between 85 to 90% largely agrarian. However, the beautiful scenery of the Middle Belt region has over the years been turned into an ecological disaster, marred with mass graves straddling all the length and breadth of the region, from farmers being attacked on the farmlands, from mourners being ambushed while returning from a funeral, and villages being ransacked, people being killed, massacred in the most gruesome manner that lifts a question mark on what humanity really means on this side of the global spectrum. The scale of deaths recorded within the past 18 months would run into thousands. And the point is, in summary, we can say without any vestige of pessimism that the life of an average Middle Beltan has been reduced to a statistical figure. So when it happens, all that anyone cares about is how many. Nobody wants to even humanize those who died. Nobody wants to even no one even wants to profile these people who have died. Perhaps those who might be presidents become very, very renowned legal luminaries, very, very prospective doctors who could lead groundbreaking research that would help us put an end perhaps to some terminal illnesses. I mean, these are people with prospects. These are people with ambitions. These are people with dreams. But it is daily shattered. It is daily condemned, and in the end, our lives have just been reduced to a statistical figure. In other words, the life of the Middle Belter is even, to a large extent, less important than the life of cows. Because I can tell you without equivocation that in 2023 December, when we have the Christmas Eve attacks,
yes,
we buried over 250 In May 2022, in Mango local government, for instance, over 400 persons were killed. No arrest, no any investigation, and in fact, to add salt to injury, when the military came, it was instead 5 vigilantes that were killed and their bodies displayed to the public. And all that the army could say was that these are the attackers.
So you're saying that those people that were displayed, those bodies that were displayed, were not, that was
they
false.
were not attackers.
They were not attackers.
They were vigilantes that were trying to,
and the people could identify them as vigilantes.
Of course, they were. And beyond that, moving up to what happened in the Christmas Eve attacks, grave silence. In fact, the profile of these persons who are being killed, the profile of the number of houses destroyed, and how many people have been left homeless, how many children have been rendered fatherless, how many women have been rendered widows, and how many livelihoods have been destroyed. It's not even the preoccupation of the Nigerian state. However, when you look at what happened in Uromi, which stands condemnable, that 16 hunters from the north allegedly were massacred. What happened? You may be shocked, perhaps, to learn that out of the 11 people arrested, I can, without any doubt, provide you with 9 of the names who are middle belters from thief land in particular, who were railroaded, arrested, and linked to this particular crime. All of them are languishing in Area 2, Garki.
And you feel that all those people had nothing to do with this?
They are trumped-up charges. How could something happen in Uromi and all the persons arrested are middle belters, young people who only just came there to look for a means of livelihood, just to survive?
Dr. Kava,
I have the names.
I'm going to come back to that. You have the names.
I have the names.
I'm going to come back to that. We'll probably put the
and their local government areas. One of them is even an undergraduate student of mass communication in Taraba State University.
I'll come back to that. Now, you mentioned there are thieves, people from Thief region, that's in Benue State. Now, for the context of which we're talking about, can you highlight what part of the country exactly comprises the Middle Belt so that people don't get it wrong exactly?
Okay.
What states, what areas, what regions? There are those who believe, you talked about Uromi now, there are many who believe that Edo State is part of the Middle Belt.
No.
Could you please describe what states make up this Middle Belt region we're talking about?
The Middle Belt is a conglomeration of autochthonous, independent ethnic nationalities of the North. And when I'm talking about independent ethnic nationalities, I'm talking about Southern Kebbi, I'm talking about Southern Borno, I'm talking about Southern Yobe, I'm talking about Southern Bauchi, I'm talking about Southern Kaduna, I'm talking about Gombe, I'm talking about Taraba, I'm talking about Adamawa, I'm talking about Taraba, I'm talking about Benue, I'm talking about Plateau, I'm talking about Nasarawa, I'm talking about Kogi, I'm talking about Niger, and I'm talking about the Federal Capital Territory. That is 15 states of the North is what the Middle Belt encompasses. And beyond that, the Middle Belt is a conglomeration, like I have stated, of ethnic nationalities who are independent of the Sokoto Caliphate and the Sultanate of Borno when the British came in 1900. So all of these ethnic nationalities that I've mentioned have never been under the rulership or the leadership of either the Sokoto Caliphate or the Sultanate of Borno. So they have been independent before the British came in 1900, and up to this moment, we have remained an independent conglomeration of multifarious ethnic nationalities.
There's clearly more than what meets the eye in all of this, because based on what you've explained to me now, geographically, I can see that those states you mentioned are actually very rich in agriculture. The river basins in those states,
Yes.
spread across. It's almost seeming like it's there's some kind of connection with what. But that's the topic that we'll still go into now. We continue to see attacks in like places like Benue, Plateau, and southern Kaduna, like you clearly mentioned. And I just want to ask, with disturbing frequencies, might I add, these attacks that we've been seeing, is this purely a breakdown of the security architecture in those places, or do we have cause to believe that there are deeper political motives at play here?
Okay. I would want to go into the historical antecedents of what underpins all of this madness you see happening within the Middle Belt region. First and foremost, when the British came and took over this particular geographical territory that eventually became Nigeria, what the British did is that they placed the Anglo-Saxons on the top of the pyramid. Under them, they placed the Teutonic races, that is the Asians and the Red Indians, Chinese, all of that. Under them, they now placed the white Arabs. I'm talking about the social stratification of the British in their entire colonial conquest. Under the white Arabs are the Fulani, and under the Fulani, we have the Hausa. And under the Hausa, we have the child or pagan races. That is any ethnic nationality that is not any of the ones I've mentioned, including you, perhaps. Now, as a resultant consequence of this social stratification, it now created a relationship of superiority and inferiority between the ethnic groupings in the north, particularly between the Hausa and the Fulani on the one hand, and the other ethnic nationalities of the north. In particular, when you go to every northern state, you discover there is always a Sabongari in every state of the north. Now, Sabongari is usually delineated for the infidels. The infidels encompasses all those who subscribe to African traditional religion and those who could be pagans, because they believe that these were animists. They are not even human. They are not even to be treated as human beings because they lack the sophistication that the Emirate system, which is purely Islamic, has provided for, in particular, the Hausa on the one hand and the Fulani on the other hand. Now, the Sabongari is usually delineated for those kind of what? People who do not fit into the what? The configuration of the British. And in particular, you would realize that given the ethos of the Emirate system, which wields absolute power in the emir, who doubles as a religious and as a political leader, it was easier for him to what? Have absolute control over the territory, over his territory, and over the people. Now, the Emirate system provided a very, very conducive frame for indirect rule to thrive. And given that the Emirate system provided a vehicle to drive indirect rule, are we together? The British nurtured the Emirate system and promised the North never to tamper with either the Emirate system or the Quranic educational system, and to nurture it for succession upon independence. That is a foundational fault line. And that is why, even though Nigeria was amalgamated in 1914, an iron curtain wall still exists between the North and the South. When you reflect on the comments of our nationalists, Awolowo, of course, mentioned that what? Nigeria is just what? A mere geographical expression. Yeah. What did Saudana of what did the Saudana have to say about it? Ahmadu Bello. He said that 1914 is a he regarded it as the mistake of 1914 because what? It dislocated, according to him, the North from its proud Islamic past. Now, beyond that, I want to take it up because that is a very, very far Are we together? A deep historical antecedent. But let me bring it up to what that foundational fault line has over time snowballed into. Between the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, we have Quranic educational institutions, Quranic schools in the north, just as I've mentioned, which of course were still part and parcel and well fitted into the emirate system of the north. Now, those Quranic educational institutions had students from different, cities of the north who were being taught the religion, who were being taught, and being educated in the tenets of Islam. Now, Middle Eastern Muslim countries like Kuwait, Iran, even Egypt, are all together, and many others, Turkey and the rest, came into northern Nigeria and recruited students from most of these Quranic schools and took them particularly to Cairo in Egypt, and they were indoctrinated in the philosophy of Said Qutb. And some went and were taught in the philosophy of Maulana Maududi. He is a Pakistani Indian Muslim scholar or Islamic scholar. What is the philosophy of these two clerics? Their philosophy is built or hinged on how to create an Islamic state. Now, when these people learned and imbibed those doctrines, and they came back in the late 70s to the early 80s, that was when the Metasine religious eruptions commenced in Nigeria.
Dr. Kavum, I may have to cut you short because of time, but I want you to fast forward some of these historical, backgrounds to all of these, and explain to me how this has, like you said, snowballed into these insecurities that we're seeing now, and possibly if it is some kind of political motive, if there's some kind of political motive underplay here, or is it just a breakdown of our security architecture?
Now, like I said, when they returned in the early 80s, that was when the Metasine religious interruptions commenced. Now, how do you create an Islamic state? You create an Islamic state first through indoctrination. And when indoctrination fails, you use your disciples whom you have so indoctrinated, you feed them into different institutions of the state, the police, the army, the armed forces, feed them into the government, into politics, into the judiciary, into the legislature, all institutions of government, so that they can use those institutions, together, to now bring about the realization of an Islamic state. What is ISWAP? ISWAP is what? Islamic State of what? West Africa province. And you know their relationship with Boko Haram. So all of this is something that, of course, I don't need not to go into all those details. Now, in particular, when the Metasine religious interruption commenced, you discover that the pattern of the Metasine religious interruption, the Kalakato that followed afterwards, the Taliban, are we together? And eventually the Boko Haram. After the Boko Haram, we now have the bandits in Northwest. We now have Lakurawa in North Central. And recently, there's another one called Mahmuda in North Central. All of these are fronts tilted towards the attainment of that same universal or cardinal goal. Let me give you an example. There are 5 stages, like I did say. Indoctrination. After you indoctrinate, you now use your disciples to use institutions of state to bring that to a reality. If that fails, you now use them to cripple or undermine the capacity of the institutions of state to make that a reality. When that fails, then the last option becomes what? Jihad. Now, look at what the Boko Haram have been doing. How did Yusuf comment? He started by what? Going around and teaching. And preaching like a scholar. Are we together? When that was slow, what did they start doing? They started what? Sending their adherents into the police, into the army, and into other institutions of state to what? Use them to what? Achieve their aim. When that failed, you remember how they started? They started attacking police stations. They started bombing barracks. Are we together? Why were they doing that? They were trying to what? Compromise the capacity of the state to respond to these lethal threats. And when it failed, eventually, what did they resort to? They resorted to what? Jihad. And that is why the Boko Haram has always maintained that it is what? On a jihad.
Okay, and as I'm wrapping up this segment, you are saying your final word on this is that the end game for them here is what? Jihad and Islamizing the region?
Islamizing the region, total conquest.
Total conquest.
Total conquest, to completely annihilate the people and take over their land. If anyone remains alive, that person must be what? Let me be frank with you. The ideology, I forgot to mention this, the ideology of Said Qutb and Mauludi Maudidi is based on what? Domination. Domination, slavery, and submission.
Dr. Kavwa, I'll have to put a pause to that at this point. Domination, slavery, and submission, you said. All right, we'll take this quick break, and when we come back, we're still discussing with Dr. Kavwa. I'm talking about the insecurities that we're beginning to witness, or that we have been witnessing in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria. Do stay with us.
Well, you asked for it.
And New Central has delivered.
You asked for it.
And New Central has delivered.
You asked for it. And we delivered.
You asked for it?
Now you've got it.
Yes, New Central is live on GoTV Channel 23. Get the latest news and headlines from Nigeria and across the world. With GoTV, New Central gives you major stories and breaking news on politics, business, sports, and entertainment at your fingertips. Welcome to fearless reporting like no other. You asked for it. And now you've got it. News Central on GoTV Channel 23.
Thank you for staying with us. We've been discussing with Dr. Stanley Kavwa about the state of security in Nigeria's Middle Belt region. Dr. Kavwa, thank you for still staying with us and for enlightening us more. Now, I want to quickly jump in. Now, the government often says that it's deploying, or it has deployed security forces to these hotspots, as it were. But the killings still persist, you know. So I'm asking now, from your opinion and from the position where you stand, are these interventions real, or are they just lip service? But I also want to infuse here, are there people that you think or that you know that could be behind these insecurities? Because to start with, some of these weapons, this equipment that they use are not cheap, and in some interview, I've heard you talk about how they get supplies, sometimes even via air service, through helicopters. So, I mean, my question again, from your position, are these interventions real that we're hearing from the government, or is it just lip service? And who are the people behind these things, if you have any idea?
Okay, let me start with the first question. When I sit down here and make allegations, I am first and foremost a researcher, and I'm an academic. I don't just talk on the basis of maybe what I hear people discuss in the beer parlor, or what maybe one sensational journalist decides to put out, on the papers and all of that. I go into deep research to understand, and whatever I tell you here, it's the truth. Goodluck Jonathan, during his presidency, admitted that he had Boko Haram sponsors in his government. Commander Olaomi has come out severally to tell us the number of governors, senators that are part and parcel of the insurgency ravaging the country. In fact, the United Arab Emirates sent a list of over 300 financiers of terror to the Nigerian government. Have they been able to name even one person? So the point is this: there is complicity. And when General T.Y. Anjuma alleged that the military colludes with these terrorists to unleash terror on unsuspecting citizens of this country, he wasn't just speaking from his lips. He was speaking from his head, and he was speaking from his heart, because he knows. He has intelligence. He has a lot of intelligence about the activities of what the state in all of this. Now, let me be very, very frank and let's be very, very graphic about this. Look at all the madness that the military has done in the southeast. Why is it that the military becomes so aggressive and so powerful to quell and to suppress any insurrection within the southeast? But whenever it comes to the Middle Belt region, they all suddenly become lame ducks. The intelligence gathering mechanism suddenly becomes porous. All of a sudden, there are no military personnel, no policemen. Oh, they have not been given authority to go in. Oh, they lack equipment and all of that. I have mentioned that they have bases from which they operate. In Nasarawa State, there is a place called Mahanga, which lies at the valley, which lies, at the foot of the Bokos Hills, bordering Wamba to the south. It's from this particular, yes, in Plateau State. No, in Nasarawa State.
Nasarawa State.
It's between Plateau and Nasarawa State, but it's actually within Wamba local government. It's from this local government that most of the attacks on Plateau, on southern Kaduna, Benue, and Taraba are orchestrated. There is another base again in Gishiri.
And how do you know this? That
why would we not know?
In that particular
Why
place?
would we not know?
If it's known publicly, then how come that there has not been any raid of
now,
that place?
what I'm saying in essence is that I have alluded to this fact on Arise TV at in the heat of the Christmas Eve attacks. Have the security either raided that place or come out to deny? They cannot debunk it because it's a fact. I'm not the only one who knows this, sir. Do I need any proof to say you are wearing glasses? When it is obvious I can see it? We are from that particular reason, and we know how many deaths we've buried. We know how many mass graves saturate the length and breadth of our land. So we're not even talking based on hearsay. No.
So again, you're saying that these people are known.
Apart from Mahanga, of course, it's the Fulani terrorists that are wreaking havoc on our land. It is a fact. Let's call a spade. And we have to be unapologetic about it. The point is this: you only have one life, and when you drop dead, that's all. And in any case, nobody would live forever on this earth. So the point is this: we cannot come and sit down here and be romanticizing the truth, be deodorizing it just because I want to be politically correct. I don't stand for that. That is an insult on the memory of all the thousands that have been buried in cold blood, with all their dreams and their visions and all that they wish to become, all buried. Because the thing is this: beyond even Mahanga, we have Gishiri. Gishiri is after Tunga when you're crossing from within Awe local government, when you're crossing over to Taraba State. That's another base from which they attack the thieves in Taraba and Benue State. There's another one in Rukubi in Doma local government, all in Nasarawa State. Are you telling me the security are not aware of all of this? They are aware. Do you know the sophisticated weapons with which these guys unleash this terror?
Speaking of these sophisticated weapons, right, it's not possible for, I don't think it's possible for them to acquire these weapons on their own. So do you think that these terrorists, let me put it that way, regardless of whatever location they come from, do you think they're acting on their own volition? Or there's some kind of backing and sponsorship, or both, pushing them to achieve a certain agenda?
The point is this: I have already laid a foundation for this discourse.
Yes.
And I've told you that first is to indoctrinate. Second, use state institutions to further their own agenda of creating an Islamic state. When that fails, they compromise institutions. So the point is there is complicity of all of these dregs and these undesirable elements who have infiltrated all the ranks of governance at different levels. Let me give you a classical example. Sunday Jackson in Adamawa State was attacked by a Fulani terrorist, stabbed multiple times. And when he resisted and in self-defense was able to overpower the attacker and killed him, what happened to him? He was sentenced to what? Death by hanging. By what? The Supreme Court of the land. You think okay, now, irrespective of all the deaths and the numbers that were buried on the plateau in Benue, in Taraba, in Adamawa State, name all of them, Southern Kaduna and the rest of them, has give me one example of one Fulani, which, even though we know they are the ones orchestrating these attacks, there's ever been apprehended and taken before the law court and convicted. In fact, there was a time they were arrested, I think during Jang's administration.
Yeah.
And when they were taken to Abuja, all of them were free. The Plateau State House of Assembly had to enact a law that anybody who is caught in the case or in the related to any violence must be tried on the plateau. All to what? To stem the what? The overbearing influence of what? The oligarchic north. Let me be very, very frank with you. You see, that's why I had to lay that foundation, so to understand where it's coming from. You see, the problem of, or the tragedy of our collectivity is that we love treating problems on the top of a tree. The thing is this. Let me use a tree as a frame of analysis. The tree has roots, right? It has roots, it has a trunk, it has branches and leaves. All that you see happening within the entirety of the Middle Belt are just what? Leaves. The root of the problem is what I have already established at the beginning of this conversation. And the point is this: it's not possible for you to plant a mango tree and expect to harvest guava. It's not possible, or avocado. It's not possible. So if you keep cutting the branches or cutting the leaves, expecting avocado to spring out someday, or maybe guava or any other thing, you're only deluding yourself. So the only thing is for you to uproot that tree and plant an avocado tree or plant a guava tree, and you can have guava.
Let me quickly chip this in here. Still talking about this insecurity and the agenda that you claim or that you say is in view for these terrorists. Do you think that by any chance some of this may be coming from external forces outside of the country?
Number one, you remember the imposition of Sharia in some northern states. Was it not championed by governors?
Yes.
Now, any person elected into public office in Nigeria has sworn an oath ab initio to protect and defend the integrity of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended. Now, when they now flouted Sharia across the northern flank of the country, what were they doing? Was that not treason? That was treason against what? The Nigerian state. However, but because of what? The deep-seated agenda that I have already established at the beginning, it was treated with kid gloves. In fact, it was actually even allowed to die a natural death on its own, without the state actually aggressively contending it. Can the Middle Belt, for instance, attempt such? You know, the thing is this: when I keep talking about what the British did and the superiority with which these people approach any issue, just like the Uromi massacre, 16 northern hunters killed in Uromi. Screaming headlines, local and international, including notable personalities like the Sultan of Sokoto and many others coming out to condemn. Have they ever condemned what's happening, the carnage that is happening on the plateau? Now, beyond that, and worst of all, is that the Middle Belter has become an alien in this country, where he is hunted by the North, and then he is rejected by the South. Because how can thief people, old thief people, 11 of them arrested in connection with that, and they are all languishing in Abuja, in Garki, and in detention.
Dr.
All
Kamal,
of them thief people. Now you want to tell me that what happened in Uromi in particular was rather northerners killing northerners, because they don't even see us as being different from the North. Meanwhile, as far as the North is concerned, we are just a statistical figure.
And that's exactly why I asked you to, to put it into geographical context so that people know where exactly these locations are. I'm going to have to take another break, but before I do that, just 1 minute, I'd like you to quickly explain to me in 1 minute, or to those watching, basically, how these killings and how this violence has affected the physical, economical, social, and possibly psychological well-being of the people in these communities, particularly in the Middle Belt. 1 minute.
The trauma is unbelievably tragic. The economic war or the economic strangulation, let me use that word, that these attacks have completely rendered our people prostrate, is to such a level that even eating has become a luxury to our people. We are economically broken into pieces, psychologically traumatized, and the point is that they have succeeded in what? Instilling fear even in our governors, instilling fear in even the leadership of the peoples of the Middle Belt, such that they become subservient. I've told you about the mission and the agenda. It's what? Instill what? First and foremost, they instill fear. And that is why there must be what? Enslavement or slavery. There must be what? Domination and what? Submission. So if you don't submit, you remember when someone, was it the president or so, was it Buhari or so, that came out to say that it's better for you to lose your land than to die. Which means what? As a Middle Beltan, it's better for you to what? To be alive and leave the land for these terrorists to inhabit. And let me be frank, I mentioned this again. 164 communities have been taken over, inhabited by these terrorists, and renamed on the plateau.
Dr. Kavwam, I'm sorry, but I'll have to call for another break now. Everything you're trying to unpack right now is deeper, clearly deeper than what meets the eye. We'll have to take another break. And when we come back, we'll still be delving into further questions and looking deeper into the issues of the Middle Belt with Dr. Stanley Kavwam. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We are now on the final stretch, or the home stretch, if you like, of our exclusive interview with Dr. Stanley Kavwam, who's been telling us about the plight of the people in Nigeria's Middle Belt region. Dr. Kavwam, thank you for joining us and for doing this with us. Now,
Thank you.
I want to ask you, we've seen, from government to government, administration to administration, has there, in your opinion, as somebody who has been monitoring this and who is from this region, has there been any difference, or is there any difference between what operated with the previous administration, Buhari's government, but let's start from Jonathan's government to Buhari's government and to what we have now? Has there been any improvement? Has it collapsed into a worse state? Has there been any difference at all?
Well, I will still keep going, I still take you back to what I've established at the beginning of this conversation. You cannot be treating problems on the top of a tree and expect to have any reasonable result. Because like I've stated, if you have cancer and the cancer is at the root of a tree, unless you're able to remove that cancer, whatever you do on top of the tree, or at best, cut the branches, it's just a matter of time they will eventually sprout, and you have the same problems over and over again. Because the point is this, look, you can even answer this question yourself. For the past 10, 15, 20 years, has anything changed with respect to the killings within the Middle Belt region? The fact is, it's there for everybody to see. So the point is just that there could be a little lull. Are we together? Depending on what? Depending on what the architects or financiers of this agenda which I've established from the beginning see or perceive or feel is their interest. I'm not a prophet of doom, but let me be frank with you, there will be more attacks in the build-up to the 2027 general election because, one, these people always come to the negotiating table with what? Violence. Because violence is the last option for what? State capture. Now, having stated that, I want you to look at this scenario. Just yesterday, about 14 young people were hacked and killed in Kwapil, in Chibok local government area of Maiduguri, of Borno State. Kwapil is a village in Chibok, Borno State. Killed in cold blood, no arrest made, and all of them are just going to be buried like flies. Beyond that, as we speak, there have been pockets of killings that take place on a daily basis in different Middle Belt states and in different communities. When you get to hear about it, it's because we are talking about maybe 50, 100, but when it's just maybe 15, 10, that's what I mean. By what? The fact that our lives have been reduced to what? A mere statistical figure. We do not even matter as humans. Now, if you look at what happened within the Jonathan's administration, of course, and then the Buhari's administration, right up to the Tinubu's administration, if there's anything that has changed, is the fact that there is no any tacit approval for terror. That is by elevating the Fulani and the cows of the Fulani to the level where they are, quote and unquote, seen as citizens in the state, while human beings have now been reduced to the level of being animals. Because, for instance, I know that when, for instance, the president or whatever, or is the leader of the Mate Allah Cattle Breeders Association, that is Magban, would not have been under detention in spite of all the atrocities that the Fulani herdsmen, or terrorists rather, have committed within the country. And what we are saying in essence is this: if at all there would be any change in all the madness going on within the Middle Belt region, it's when the leaders stop deceiving these young people that they are fighting a jihad for God. Then they stop deceiving them that they are fighting for God. Because the point is this: you will never see the children of the elite at the forefront of all of this madness.
That's a point that has been raised several times.
And the point is this: when you look at the poverty in the north, when you look at the abject penury that the northerners, the average northerner, is subjected to, it is simply inflicted on him by a gang of reprobates who masquerade as leaders and protectors of the old order, and they try to garnish and they try to, to bury everything or dress it in the garment of religion. Now, the total number of out-of-school children in the north ranks over 30 million. That is even a population of some countries in Africa. And why do they deliberately deny them education? So that they cannot think independently. And the thing is this: education is a process that inspires critical thinking and reflection. Without the ability to what? To be able to process information, you can't think like a human being. So you are at best an animal. So they allow them to wallow in ignorance, allow them to wallow in the gloom and the darkness of illiteracy, such that they can what? Use them as a cannon fodder, send them into different, terrorist groups and different battlefronts, and give them the idea that they are fighting for God. They're not fighting for any God. They are the same people going through imagine the 8 years of Buhari's administration, all the pain that were endured. Were they excluded? The fact is no. So the point is this: I don't see any end in sight. That's just the truth. Let's be honest about it. Because one, Nigeria as it exists is not even a nation. It's just it's just a gathering. You just brought people and then we're just like people trapped in a stampede where you're just moving, even when your legs are not even feeling the ground. You just see yourself moving. You don't actually have direction. It is just wherever the crowd flows, that's where you head.
Let me cut in here, Doctor. I'm looking at some of the images that you shared with me earlier on my screen, and I'm seeing images of grazing cattle in farms. These are people's farmlands. And besides that, I'm seeing communities that have been ransacked, and then sadly there are mass graves, like you mentioned earlier. In some of these images, videos, and pictures. Some put in coffins, some just buried, like you said, some in large numbers, some in few numbers here, and these are very, very disturbing images and visuals. Communities that have been razed, burnt, and bodies put in the back of trucks. Some mutilated beyond recognition. We see that there are groups that take their grievances to their governments, whether state governments or even to federal level in different parts of the country. The Middle Beltans, do they have groups, or do they have a group that is raising its voice, or that are raising their voices loud enough for their rulers to hear, raising their voices so loud that it cannot be ignored. And what's happening to these groups if they actually do exist?
Well, let me take it from this angle. In the wake of the killings that took place in Bokos and in Bassa, a group of Fulani terrorists, that's what I would call them, held a press conference in Kaduna. The person who read the text of the press conference is one Umar Mohammed, is it Garba also, giving terms for peace on the plateau, as if we were fighting. These are people who invade peaceful communities and leave behind what? Blood and what? Terror. And these are people who are now going to hold a press conference giving conditions for peace. The security agents do not arrest them. The DSS does not arrest them. The police do not arrest them. The army looks away, which means they are what? Owning. They are what? Taking ownership or responsibility for what took place on the plateau. And they have not been arrested and brought to book. That is a poser. Beyond that, the IGP came to Plateau and he's saying, let's dialogue, we should embrace peace. Okay, if we're to dialogue, with whom are we going to dialogue?
So, but what I'm asking now, the Middle Belt Forum, you know, the youths among them, the people, the officials, the Middle Belt Forum, what are they doing?
This conversation on this television station is part of what? Our advocacy. Because the point is this. Imagine, for instance, when killings, attacks took place in different communities in Benue State, and the governor would come out and try to euphemize and ghettoize and romanticize it. Try to cover it, let people not even know the scale of attack that has come upon the people. That is the person who is supposed to be standing for the people. On the plateau, what do we have? In spite of all the numbers of people who buried in thousands, we are now confronted with screaming headlines of 30 cows being poisoned or that they went and ate grass and they died, and the government is setting up a committee to investigate how those cows died.
So are you saying
No, the point is, you need to understand this. Beyond that, Sheun Okinbaloyi asked the governor of Plateau State, who are the killers on the plateau? And he said that criminality has no ethnicity, when we know that it is the Fulani herdsmen that are killing our people. But what did he say? That even the indigenous ethnic groups participate or engage in cattle rustling and they've paid compensations. How much has he ever paid as a compensation to any community that has lost lives in hundreds? In my own local government, Mangu to be precise, we've buried more than 500 people within the past 2 years.
So you're saying that groups like the Middle Belt Forum now, that
Yes.
their hands are tied? That is,
Our hands are tied. If you say, okay, like the Director General of the DSS came out and said we should defend ourselves, you have completely turned our farmlands into an ecological disaster. You've displaced, destroyed our homes. You've economically made us prostrate. We do not even have the money to even farm to feed ourselves, and you're saying we should defend ourselves. With what will we acquire even the weapons? And where will we even see the weapons to acquire them, to defend ourselves? So with what are we going to defend ourselves? Because apart from the fact that you're killing us, there's an economic aspect to all of this. Because by the time you make somebody, you destroy the economic fortunes of a person, you make that person completely vulnerable.
Dr. Kavam, this is clearly an ongoing conversation. It doesn't end here. But I want to ask, do you see any solution in sight ahead of us, whether now or in the long term?
Well, the only solution I see is when, Karl Marx, in its typology of the society, divided the society into two groups, a class in itself and a class for itself. A class in itself, it's the mass of the poor, the masses who are what? Focusless, do not have a common interest. They lack any ideology or any philosophy that drives whatever they do. They are the ones that will keep killing themselves, battering themselves from using religion, using ethnicity, and all manner of divisions. The class in itself, the class for itself, is the elite class. The politicians, the governors, the senators, name all of them, the captains of industry. They don't have any political party, they have no religion, they have no ethnicity. The only religion they have, the only ethnicity they have is their what? It's their own economic interest. That is why you would see them band and gather when, whether it's PDP or APC, QGA, DP, whatever, whenever one of them is getting married, you see what? Private jets land like what? Birds from the air. Congregate, and you see them laughing, eating, dining, whining, and partying together. And it happens all over the country, irrespective of their religious divide, irrespective of their ethnic divide, and all of that. But the point is that they have common interests. They are focused, they are strategic, and they understand what they want. And it is from their own exploitation of the illiteracy and the ignorance of the class in itself, which is made up of the mass of the people who are illiterate, who don't even know. For instance, there will be a lot of them watching this interview. They will feel like, let them rip my flesh into pieces. Because what? Maybe I have, in the course of all the truths that I have brought to bear in this interview, angered or in any way gone against either the agenda of those people that have sworn an oath to keep them in perpetual servitude, to keep them in bondage. And the fact is that instead of looking at their oppressor, the one that they would want to target for their own attack would be someone like me, who is one and part of them, and desires and yearns for things to get better. Because the fact remains that, look, religion, in the words of Iwi, 2000, it's essentially and fundamentally a spiritual issue and exercise. He said it arises from man's quest for answers to the basic, universal, non-material issues of human existence. So therefore, my religion should not in any way stop me from providing water to my citizens as a governor. My religion should not stop me from advocating for good governance as a legislator. My religion should not, or my ethnicity should not stop me from ensuring that we provide electricity, provide functional healthcare system, provide functional education to the public. But the point is this, when you now juxtapose the principles of liberal democracy, which is anchored in equality, on liberty, on freedom, are we together, on fairness and equity, against a philosophy that is based on slavery, domination, and submission, you can now see what? A clash. And that clash is what has led to all the what? Avoidable deaths that we've witnessed. Granted, yes, there will be always what? External influences. For instance, how many attempts have been made to annihilate or to assassinate the head of state of Burkina Faso? But the point is that because of the resilience of what? Of his people, are we together? They have come together, they have been able to what? Identify a common destiny and a shared future for their own country, and they have now bonded together to see that they make it a reality. But here, nothing binds us together.
Because we are pressed for time, I beg your pardon, I would have to put a pause to this. But I would ask you one last question, and I'd ask you to please answer in just 60 seconds. Okay. If you had this 60 seconds to address our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, concerning what's going on in the Middle Belt, what exactly would you tell him in 60 seconds?
I would tell the president that, one, the day he would summon the courage and the boldness to address our security chiefs and give them an order that he does not want to hear of any death, and let him make it public on media, that he doesn't want to hear of any death anywhere in the country. If he hears of any death, of any invasion of any community, of any genocide or any attack on any community, he's going to remove all of them. There will never be any death in this country.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaba.
So it's lack of political will. And the day the president, I dare him, let him do that, and you would see the result yourself.
I think that's where we're going to put a stop to this well, it's the best place, I think, for us to put an end, to this conversation. But the conversation definitely is one that will continue. It doesn't end in our studios. Dr. Stanley Kavwam, I would like to say a big thank you for your time on this NC exclusive and for lending your voice to a region that too often feels forgotten. The Middle Belt is not just a flashpoint and just not figures, like you said. It is the home of millions of Nigerians who deserve peace, justice, and dignity. As the nation grapples with insecurity on multiple fronts and not just the Middle Belt area, we hope that today's conversation serves as both a wake-up call and a reminder no part of Nigeria is truly safe until every part is safe. We'll continue to follow developments in the region closely here on News Central Television. And, well, we would like to say that do stay with us as we continue to do that. My name is Bernard Akede. Thank you so much. There's more ahead.